Our feelings reach out beyond us. Those who accuse men of always gaping after future things and teach us to lay hold of present goods and settle ourselves in them, since we have no grip on what is to come, indeed a good deal less than we have on what is past, put their finger on the commonest of human errors. If they dare to call an error something to which nature herself leads us in serving the continuation of her work, we are never at home, we are always beyond. Fear, desire, hope project us toward the future and steal from us the feeling and consideration of what is, to busy us with what will be, even when we shall no longer be. A soul anxious about the future is most vulnerable. Seneca. As folly, though it has gotten what it wanted, yet never thinks it has obtained enough, so wisdom is always content with the present and never displeased with itself. Cicero. Among the laws that concern the dead, this one seems to me as solid as any, which obliges the actions of princes to be examined after their death. They are equals with, if not masters of, the laws. What justice could not do to their persons, it should rightfully be able to do to their reputations and to the property of their successors, things that we often prefer to life. It is a custom that brings singular advantages to the nations in which it is observed, and desirable to all good princes. Man does not uproot himself from life and cast his self away. Unconsciously he dreams some part of him will stay, nor from his cast-off body does he depart enough and free himself. Lucretius. Bertrand du Guesclin died commanding the siege of the castle of Randon, near Les Puy in Auvergne. The besieged, when they surrendered after his death, were obliged to place the keys of the fortress on the dead man's body. When Bartolomeo Alviano, general of the Venetian army, had died in the service of the wars Venice waged against Brescia, and his body had to be brought back to Venice through the enemy territory of Verona. Most of the army thought they should ask the people of Verona for safe conduct to pass through, but Teodoro Trivulzio opposed this and chose rather to pass by main force with the risks of battle. It was not fitting, he said, that he who in life had never been afraid of his enemies should have the appearance of fearing them in death. Indeed, in a related matter, by Greek laws, he who asked the enemy for a body to bury it renounced the victory, and it was no longer lawful for him to erect a trophy. To him who was asked this, it was proof of winning. Thus, Nicias lost the advantage that he had clearly gained over the Corinthians, and conversely, Agesilaus ensured the one which he had very doubtfully won over the Boeotians. These actions might seem strange if it were not an accepted practice in all ages to extend the concern we have for ourselves beyond this life, and even to believe that very often celestial favors accompany us to the tomb and continue to operate in our bones, of which there are so many ancient examples, leaving aside our own, that there is no need for me to elaborate. Edward I, King of England, found in his long wars with King Robert of Scotland how much advantage his presence gave to his affairs, so that he always carried off the victory in what he undertook in person. Accordingly, when he came to die, he obliged his son by a solemn oath to have his body boiled, to detach his flesh from the bones. The flesh should be interred, the bones his son should save to carry with him in his army every time he should happen to be at war against the Scots, as if destiny had fatally attached victory to his limbs. John Zizka, who troubled Bohemia in defense of Wycliffe's errors, willed to be flayed after his death and to have a drum made of his skin to carry into war against his enemies, thinking that this would help continue the advantages he had obtained in the wars he had conducted against them. Thus certain Indians carried into combat against the Spaniards the bones of one of their captains in consideration of the success he had won when alive, and other peoples in this same new world bring to war the bodies of the valiant men who have died in their battles to serve them as good luck and encouragement. First examples reserve for the tomb only the reputation acquired by their past actions, but these want to add even the power to act. Of a finer temper is the deed of Captain Bayard, who, feeling himself wounded to death by a harquebus shot in the body, and advised to withdraw from the fight, replied that he would not begin at the end of his life to turn his back on the enemy, having fought as long as he had strength, and feeling himself faint and slipping from his horse, he ordered his steward to lay him down at the foot of a tree, but in such a way he should die with his face turned toward the enemy, as he did. I must add this other example, as remarkable for the present consideration as any of the preceding ones. Emperor Maximilian, the great-grandfather of the present King Philip, was a prince superabundantly endowed with great qualities, and among others with singular bodily beauty. But among his humours was this one, very contrary to that of the princes who, to dispatch their most important affairs, make their throne of their toilet seat, that he never had a personal servant so familiar that he would allow him to see him in his privy. He would hide to make water, as scrupulous as a virgin not to uncover, either to a doctor or to anyone else whatever, the parts that are customarily kept hidden. I who am as so bold-mouthed, am nevertheless by nature affected by this shame. Except under great stress of necessity or voluptuousness, I hardly communicate to the sight of anyone the members and acts that our custom orders us to cover up. I suffer from more constraint in this than I consider becoming to a man, and especially to a man of my profession. But Emperor Maximilian reached such a point of superstition that he ordered in so many words in his will that they should put under drawers on him when he was dead. He should have added a codicil that the man who put them on should be blindfolded. I did not like this story that a great personage told me of a connection of mine, a man pretty well known both in peace and war. It is that, dying at a very old age in his court, tormented with acute pain from the stone, he occupied all his last hours with a vehement concern about arranging the pomp and ceremony of his funeral, and pressed all the noblemen that visited him to give him their word to be present at the procession, even to this prince who saw him in this final stage. He made urgent entreaty that his household be ordered to be there, using many examples and reasons to prove that it was something due to a man of his condition, and he seemed to die content, having extracted this promise and ordered the arrangement and plan of his funeral to his taste. I have scarcely seen any vanity so persevering. The opposite kind of preoccupation, of which also I have no lack of examples close to home, seems to me germane to this one. To fret and fuss at this last stage over planning one's funeral so as to effect some trifling and unusual economy, one servant and one lantern. I see this humor praised, as was the command of Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, who forbade his heirs to employ for him the ceremonies that had been customary in such matters. It is still temperance and frugality to avoid expenses and pleasures whose use and knowledge are imperceptible to us, an easy way to reform and a cheap one. This care is to be entirely despised for ourselves, but not neglected for ours. Cicero. The arranging of funerals, the conditions of burials, the pomp of obsequies are rather a consolation for the living than any help to the dead. St. Augustine. If if I had to become more involved in this matter, I should find it more sprightly to imitate those who undertake, while alive and breathing, to enjoy the arrangement and honor of their obsequies, and who take pleasure in seeing their dead countenance in marble. Happy are those who can delight and gratify their sense by insensibility, and live by their death. You ask where you will lie after your death? Where lie the souls unborn? Seneca. And let him have no tomb, no haven of repose, to give his lifeless body respite from his woes. Ennius, quoted by Cicero.